Hello everyone, welcome to Voting Trend. This is Dave, and in today's video I want to talk about an Axios article that came out today with a new poll from the Financial Times, which I find extremely interesting because I think it's something that a lot of people aren't talking about with the election, and that is this change in the way people looked at Biden and his campaign compared to how they're looking at Harris and Walz now in their campaign. There's a fundamental change, and everyone's talking about, oh, they like the dad aspect of Walz and all that. And I think that has something to do with it. And I think that has a lot to do with it, to be honest. But there's been a fundamental shift in the way people are perceiving this, or actually the voting behavior change in the way in which they're changing their judgment. So we're going to talk about that. But I want to talk about this Axios article where it says voters trust Harris more than Trump on economy. And they look at this poll from the Financial Times, and you can see for the first time, you see the Democrat ahead of the Republican, Donald Trump, when it comes to the economy. Now, to me, this is huge. This is a game changer. If there's any number that I've been looking at to see where the Democrats can move ahead, it's been this one. If they all of a sudden have the trust gained within the economy, it's gonna be a harder hill for Trump to climb. And this is the last poll was done in July. This one was done in August. So this was definitely done pre-Harris. This is done post-Harris. And the Axios article is pretty interesting. It talks about the double haters, the people who didn't like Biden and didn't like Trump as well. But at the end of the day, they would go with Biden probably. Now those people are more strongly going toward Kamala Harris. And they have a lot of interesting things to talk about in this article. So I'll go ahead and link that down below. But I actually wanted to look at the poll itself because this is where we kind of get the meat and potatoes and we kind of get an interesting look. Now, remember, while we're looking at this, remember that poll said that 42% of people trust Kamala Harris compared to 41% for Donald Trump. She has overtaken him. But let's look at this poll and how people are perceiving the economy. Because one thing that I've made the argument for is that a lot of people, a lot of Democratic consultants, Joe Biden campaign and others, have been talking about how this is the greatest economy since Jesus. But for some reason, people aren't feeling it. Why? Because it isn't the greatest economy since Jesus. And this kind of Jedi mind trick that the Democrats have been trying to do with the economy is just not working. That dog just won't hunt. So they need to make a fundamental change. And I think that they have. I think Harris and the Harris campaign is talking about a good economy, but being humble about it, which is exactly what they needed to do instead of the Joe Biden getting up there and saying, I did this, I did that, I did this, but yet nobody's feeling. But let's go ahead and look at this poll, the Financial Times poll, because there are a few questions I want to look at. So first and foremost, this question 2, do you approve or disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling the economy? 17% strongly approve, 22% somewhat approve. So not many people are approving of the way Joe Biden is handling the economy. Okay, pure and simple. They don't believe that. Now remember, again, want to reiterate what we talked about at the beginning. Remember, Kamala Harris is up 41 or 42 to 41 over Trump on the economy, but yet people don't have this opinion of Joe Biden. Now, this is her approval or disapproval as vice president. But let's look at this question here. How would you describe your current financial situation? 15% say living comfortably. 30% say they're, met expenses with a little left over. 30%, it's basically paycheck to paycheck, just meet expenses. And 25% having trouble. So when 55% of Americans feel that they're struggling or just getting by, again, that's not a good economy. That's not a good economy at all. How would you rate the economic conditions in the United States right now? 3% say excellent. I mean, and I was talking to a political consultant about this earlier today when we were debating the economy. I was like, I think Adolf Hitler probably has a higher approval rating than this economic indicator here. So, people aren't seeing the economy working for them. 22% say it's good. An overwhelming majority say that it's poor or not so good. Now, since Joe Biden has become president, would you say that you are financially better off? 5% say they're much better off. 14% say they are somewhat better off. That's only 19% of the electorate that say, hey, since Biden has become president, I'm doing better. I feel I'm doing better. Okay, now we don't have any crosstabs, but one thing you'll notice in the crosstabs when you break this further down, you'll usually see that's partisan. And it's a really weird effect that the Democrats will say the economy is doing better and the Republicans say it does worse. And then all of a sudden, the day that you change administrations and the day that you change parties, those numbers automatically suddenly flip. So it is a partisan indicator many times as well. In general, do you think Biden's economic policies have, helped the economy a lot? Only 11%. Help the economy somewhat, 16%. So 27% of Americans are saying that it's helped a lot or it's helped somewhat. All the rest say it has no impact or it's hurt the economy, with 4% not knowing. I mean, maybe they don't pay bills. I don't know. But these aren't great numbers. Now, here it is, because when we talk about Joe Biden's campaign, and yes, I'm talking about Joe Biden's campaign, back when he was running, they would always talk about, again, how this is the greatest economy of all time, it seemed like. But they kind of always forgot about this whole situation regarding inflation. And granted, it's not his fault because it's worldwide inflation. It's happened. It's down now, but that doesn't make up for the huge inflation we had a few months ago. But number one on this list, 78% price increases. Number two, your income level. So, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to figure this out. If your income level is low and the prices are higher, you're not going to be able to afford things. That's just pretty darn obvious, right? But they go through all these economic issues and all that. Now, this is something I found extremely, extremely interesting, because they add choices in here you don't typically see in a poll. And this might be one of the reasons why Democrats are doing a little bit better. Which of the following are most important to you in deciding your vote for president? Select up to 3. So they could pick up to 3. Economic issues like the economy and cost of living. Number 1, obviously. Immigration and border security, 32%. Now, we always hear immigration, border security being this second issue that everyone talks about. It's like the economy, immigration. That's it. It almost seems like everything else kind of falls like really, really low. This is one you rarely see. The next one is one you rarely see in any poll. The future of Social Security and Medicare, 32%, just as high as immigration. But you rarely see that in any poll. And this is where I think Democrats are doing well, because yes, you might see that somebody's doing well in an election and might not know why, but if you're not asking all the questions, you're not going to be able to glean that information and figure out why that is the case. Now, of course, we have crime, affordability of quality healthcare, 25%. So that's, all of these between threats to democracy and immigration are pretty close. But seeing that future of Social Security and Medicare, that's the Democrats' weapon. That's it right there. And that vote's only going one way. It's kind of like the immigration border security votes. That vote, for the most part, is only going one way. That's a Trump vote for people who say that's the big issue. People who say that's the big issue, that's the Democrats. And so I thought this was really interesting because you don't see this question in many polls, and I think it's really important. And then so on, we have more. Now, here comes that question that we were talking about before. Regardless of your opinion of these candidates overall, how you would vote in a presidential election, Who do you trust most to handle the economy? And this is where we have Kamala Harris at 42% and Donald Trump at 41%. And as you can see, Joe Biden was always underwater. Okay. Now, when it comes to issues with China, people say Donald Trump. And this is the interesting part. Now, remember, Kamala Harris is up by 1. If Donald Trump wins the presidential election in 2024, do you think his economic policies will leave you financially much better off or somewhat better off? Those are at 42%. They're actually down, but they're at 42%. When asked that of Kamala Harris, only 32% say that it's going to be better off. Well, I don't know why they have net about the same at 33, because at 20 and 12 is 32. But significantly less. Now, what's interesting is worse off is 38 compared to Trump's 35. So there are probably there are a lot there that are saying that the economic situation would stay the same. They probably would just think that, okay, this would just be a continuation of Biden. But I want to talk about that issue now, because I want to talk about this concept of prospective voting and retrospective voting. And we'll do retrospective voting first. So it's basically this kind of reward punish system, and it's based on past performances. So the idea of retrospective voting is that a voter decides to vote on whether they approve of the job that the current party, the incumbent party, or the incumbent president is doing. They make an evaluation of that person, and then they vote in approval or disapproval for that. So you look at it retrospectively, you award the candidate with your vote if you agree that the candidate has done a good job. You go ahead and punish them with a vote for the opposition, or not vote if you think they have done a bad job. Okay, prospective voting is the opposite, the prospect for the future, the look at the future, guess or prediction of what you think the future will be. Do you think the candidate that you see is going to provide a better future now than it will, than what you see of the current candidates, or the other opposition, I guess I should say? This tells me, looking at this poll, seeing that people aren't necessarily confident with Kamala Harris. They don't think the economy is doing great under Joe Biden. They say their own personal financial situation is bad, but yet Kamala Harris has moved up. This tells me two things. One, the electorate, when looking at Joe Biden, was a retrospective electorate. They were trying to do the punish reward system. Joe Biden saying he's doing the best job with the economy of any president like since Washington. Okay, I know I'm being facetious when I say that, but not really sometimes. They were retrospectively looking at that, and the electorate, according to this, were saying, no, Joe, you weren't doing a good job. I still can't pay bills. I still can't afford health care. I still am not being able to pay for groceries and stuff like that. And the polling data indicates that that's the case. Now that we've changed over to Kamala Harris, it almost seems as if the economic woes that Joe Biden had are not transitioning over to Kamala Harris. Even though they think that the voters think that Donald Trump will do better with the economy, make their situation better fiscally and financially, they're trusting Kamala Harris more for the future. They're looking at Kamala Harris as the candidate that can push the country forward in the future. We have purely moved from a retrospective campaign for the Democrats to a prospective campaign for the Democrats. And it is that hope and change. Barack Obama did it. Bill Clinton, a little place called Hope, he did it as well. So the prospective campaign is good. And a lot of times you can have a prospective campaign even if you are the incumbent. Ronald Reagan, 1984. It's Morning in America and all those types of commercials. He really pushed in 1984, hey, yeah, you can look at what I did in the past, but let's keep on building and keep on pushing forward. That's what's happened in the campaign. It's gone from a backward-looking campaign to evaluating Joe Biden to a forward-looking campaign and evaluating whether Kamala Harris is going to be the person that's going to guide the country into the future. And people are more confident with her doing that. So I just want to make this small video about this poll. I'll link the poll down below as well because it is interesting. I don't even know if it has a horse race in here. It might. I'm not sure. I don't think so. Which is the reason why you might not see this on 538 or Real Clear Politics, because it isn't some sort of matchup. But thank you all very much for joining me. Go ahead and go to my Substack, so you'll see it over here, votingtrend.substack.com. Sign up for the Substack and go ahead and subscribe to this channel. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day wherever it is you are, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.